Have you ever wondered in the middle of the night, how did the traps inside ancient Egyptian pyramids and tombs actually work? Picture this: massive stone boulders crashing down the moment you take your first step inside. Dozens of sharp arrows and blades shooting at you from unseen openings. The walls on either side slowly closing in, pressing together until nothing in between survives. And if by some miracle, you manage to dodge all of that and find what seems like a safe spot, the ground beneath you suddenly gives way. You plummet into the depths below, where one of two nightmares awaits: either quicksand swallowing you whole, or a pit full of slithering snakes and eerie creatures, slowly closing in as you realize too late that you've fallen into a deadly trap. And those treasures of gold and riches you were after? They were never there to begin with. This dramatic scene is deeply ingrained in pop culture, fueling the belief that the ancient Egyptians protected their tombs with elaborate, deadly traps designed to catch anyone who dared enter. But is any of this actually true? Welcome to Midnight Reflections, where curiosity never sleeps. Now, let's find out. Ancient Egyptian tombs weren't just burial sites, they were eternal palaces, where the deceased would live a new life in the afterworld. After spending their time among the living, the Egyptians believed that their souls would return to their bodies inside the tomb, from which they would embark on their journey to the next world. That's why they meticulously prepared themselves, physically and spiritually, for eternity, ensuring a secure and prosperous afterlife. A vast collection of treasures, gemstones, gold, and artifacts, even food, was placed inside the tombs, as if they were stocking up for the afterlife. But at the same time, the ancient Egyptians took every possible measure to protect these tombs from looters. At first, they tried to deter grave robbers with moral and religious warnings. Tomb walls were inscribed with sacred texts emphasizing the sanctity of the burial sites. Signs were placed at the entrances, warning that disturbing a tomb would doom its owner to an eternity without rest. Some kings even advised their children not to violate other tombs, urging them to uphold ethical values rather than repeat the mistakes of earlier rulers. One such warning came from King Khedi IV, who told his son, "Do not harm what belongs to others. Carve your own stones from the quarries and build your tomb with the work of your own hands." Another inscription, found on the tomb of a judge from King Nusera's reign, read, "This tomb was built from my own wealth, without taking from others." It stands in an open space where no other tombs existed before, and those who dare enter and defile it will face judgment before the great God. But in reality, moral warnings weren't enough. So, over time, the messages became more aggressive and ominous. One chilling inscription reads, "Death will strike with its wings anyone who dares to disturb the peace of the dead." The message was clear: grave robbers were not welcome. But despite these severe warnings, tombs were still looted. Almost every royal tomb discovered in modern times had already been robbed and ransacked centuries ago, long before archaeologists ever laid eyes on them. In fact, the only royal tomb that remained largely intact was that of King Tutankhamun, thanks to its hidden location. And when it was finally uncovered, the world got a glimpse of the sheer magnificence of ancient Egyptian tombs, revealing an era of extraordinary wealth, artistry, and craftsmanship. Tomb raiding wasn't just a modern crime, even the ancient Egyptians themselves were guilty of it. This led to the enforcement of harsh punishments for grave robbery. For example, Pharaoh Seti I issued a decree stating that anyone caught stealing from a religious institution would be punished by having their nose and ears cut off. They would then be sentenced to forced labor on state-owned farmland. But even these extreme measures failed to stop the looting. The thefts continued, and the Egyptians needed a solution that actually worked. Instead of relying on moral warnings or punishing criminals after the fact, they decided to take a more ruthless approach. They set deadly traps inside their tombs, traps so terrifying that anyone who dared to enter would be sealing their own fate. The goal was simple: make intruders think twice before even stepping foot inside. So, does that mean ancient Egyptian tombs were really booby-trapped? Well, yes and no. Yes, if we're talking about the traps and obstacles that were actually used in ancient tombs. No, if we're talking about the Hollywood-style death traps where giant boulders come crashing down, arrows fly from hidden walls, and floors suddenly collapse into pits of snakes. Movies and video games have exaggerated the reality, making it seem like pharaohs built haunted houses instead of burial sites. But in truth, the primary purpose of these tombs wasn't to trap intruders. It was to house the body of the deceased ruler along with their possessions, while also implementing some protective measures to prevent looting. The earliest effort to protect royal tombs appeared during Egypt's first dynasty. Back then, pharaohs were buried in mud brick structures called mastabas. To secure the burial chamber, they would carve a deep pit into the bedrock, about 10 to 15 feet deep, and then seal it with a massive stone slab that was nearly impossible for thieves to move. At that stage, the focus was more on protecting the mummy itself rather than the treasures buried with it. The mummified body was crucial because Egyptians believed that the soul needed an intact body to achieve eternal life. To keep the mummy safe, they used multiple layers of coffins instead of just one. The outermost coffin was usually a massive rectangular stone sarcophagus, often made from limestone, with an extremely heavy stone lid. The weight alone was meant to deter tomb robbers. Later in the following dynasties, they replaced limestone with even stronger materials like granite, quartzite, and basalt, making it even harder for intruders to access the burial chamber. As time passed, ancient Egyptians developed new methods to protect their tombs. Instead of relying only on physical barriers, they started using a different approach. They made the tomb itself hard to find. The idea was simple: if no one could locate the tomb, no one could rob it. They began building tombs in hidden locations, places that no one would suspect. But since some trusted people needed access, they created a coded system of symbols and markers. These clues were carved into rocks, hills, or even trees, acting as a secret map that could only be read by the builders and a few chosen individuals. To everyone else, these symbols were nothing more than random markings, a mystery that no common thief could decode. But despite these efforts, some robbers still managed to find the tombs. That's when the Egyptians decided they needed another layer of protection. One of the most effective anti-theft measures was the use of fake doors and passageways. Instead of blocking thieves outright, the builders tried to confuse and mislead them. Think of it like a maze, with corridors leading nowhere and doors that open to solid rock. This method was especially popular in the tombs of high-ranking officials and royal figures. A great example is the pyramid of Pharaoh Amenemhat III. His tomb was full of misleading pathways and fake doors, designed to frustrate and exhaust potential intruders. In some cases, they took the deception even further by building entire fake burial chambers. Imagine a tomb 200 square meters, over 2,100 square feet in size, with enough space for 10 rooms. But in reality, only 1 or 2 were real. The rest? A network of decoy rooms, dead-end corridors, and false doors, all designed to waste the time and energy of looters and reduce their chances of finding the real burial chamber. Beyond security, these false doors had another purpose. Ancient Egyptians believed that these entrances weren't just for the living, they were also for the souls of the dead. According to their beliefs, these false doors acted as a gateway between the world of the living and the afterlife, allowing spirits to travel freely between both realms. So while tomb designers created these traps and decoys to keep robbers out, they also believed they were helping the spirits of the dead move between worlds. One of the most effective innovations in tomb security came during the reign of Pharaoh Thutmose I, the first king to be buried in the Valley of the Kings. His architects introduced a new technique to protect royal tombs: The burial shaft. Here's how it worked. After completing the main tomb structure and burying the king, workers would dig a massive pit directly in front of the burial chamber. This shaft could be as wide as 33 feet. The idea was simple. Thieves wouldn't be able to cross such a huge opening, making it almost impossible to reach the burial chamber. Floodwaters from heavy rains wouldn't reach the tomb. Any water that flowed into the area would be diverted into the shaft, keeping the chamber dry. This technique made tombs much harder to loot and protected them from natural disasters at the same time. Enjoyed the video? Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps us going. Now you know. Got more midnight questions? Drop them in the comments. Stay curious, and I'll see you in another Midnight Mystery.